What's good, everybody? This is Amazing Bets with my UFC 305 detailed predictions, breakdowns, and suggested bets. Just to start, I'm absolutely psyched with this card and am anxiously waiting for the props to drop so we can ensure the robbery this weekend, as we're going to have some full bet sheets with bare knuckle, PFL, and UFC 305. To start things off for the night, we have Stuart Nicoll in his debut versus Jesus Aguilar. Honestly, I don't research debuting fighters that much unless I hear some serious buzz, and to me it feels as though we're fading the short-arm Jesus once again, even though he's proven himself in the Dana White Contender Series and UFC, winning as a dog twice. That's why for this fight, I'm choosing Jesus Aguilar to win by decision. Next up, we've got Kenan versus Ricky Glenn. Ricky Glenn has only fought 5 times in the past 5 years, with 2 of them coming after a year-and-a-half layoff, and being brutal round 1 KOs. On top of that, he's mostly a stand-up fighter and doesn't wrestle that much, and will be moving up a weight class after his last 2 KOs. Kenan Song's downfall can be to have a little bit of low volume, but he can still win those fights, even when he's outstruck by 30 to 40 punches. On top of that, 2 of his last 3 losses were to very tall, very skilled opponents in Jao Set and Ian Gary. I personally see Song getting the round 1 KO, as I don't know how Ricky's chin can handle the power or precision coming back at him, and I can't see him controlling on the ground moving up a weight class. Next up, we've got Tom Big Train Nolan versus Alex Reyes. Alex Reyes is Dominic Reyes' brother, and one of quite a few UFC brothers on this card. In his last fight, as a plus 410 dog versus Campbell, I thought he had some nice feints and seemed athletic with some good counters. However, he grabbed a leg on a body kick, which led to some wide open hooks that messed him up real bad. However, it is worth noting, 11 of his 13 wins have been first round finishes. On the other side, Tom Nolan is absolutely huge for this weight class. He's an amazing striker with a diverse arsenal of weapons. I personally see Nolan getting the KO in round 1, but at these odds, I wouldn't touch it, and probably will be sprinkling Alex Reyes. Next up, we've got Jack Jenkins versus Herbert Burns. Herbert Burns is Gilbert Burns' brother and is a BJJ wizard that has had a rough go of things in the UFC other than a fluke KO over Nate the Train. He typically pressures in with punches into the clinch, where he half-heartedly goes for a takedown, throws a few knees, backs away, and then rinse and repeats that exact same process. He's got a decent chin and typically survives till round 2, where he gives up on himself and gets KO'd. On the other side, you've got Jack Jenkins, who is known for his brutal leg kicks. In his last fight, he lost to Chepe, but in my opinion, he passed the clinch test versus somebody that's known for his clinch game. I see Jack getting the KO in rounds 2 or 3, maybe round 1 if Burns really doesn't like the leg kicks, and I have him quite locked this weekend. If you want to hedge, maybe throw in a Burns by round 1 submission. Next up, we've got the only ladies fight between Casey O'Neill and Luana Santos. Casey was a favorite last fight versus Lipsky and showed off her chin on the feet, and then struggled and looked lost on the ground, where she got ground and pound and eventually submitted. Luana Santos is a young fighter that trains with Macy Barber and has been a solid favorite in all of her fights, which is not my favorite because she's kind of faced trash cans. But she's shown some decent striking with some solid power when she got a KO in her debut versus Juliana Miller, but is really known for her judo and ground game. I've been off on my WMMA picks recently, so tail with caution, but I don't see a way for O'Neill to win this. So I have Santos quite locked and winning this by a dominant decision or submission. Next up, we've got a real funky matchup that I'm kind of excited for with Josh Culibao and Ricardo Ramos. Josh Culibao was a favorite last fight, but got hurt early, but showed off his chin, toughness, and made it a close split fight. He's got great movement, high volume, and goofy fun strikes and counters that's kind of hard to train for. Ricardo Ramos is another goofy fighter that's a wizard on the ground, but is known for his spinning elbow KOs and most recently getting guillotined twice in a row. I could see this fight being a very close fight and have been burned by both fighters, but I personally have Culibao semi-locked and see it being a decision or late KO. Next up, we have Junior Tafa, Justin Tafa's brother, versus Valter Walker, Johnny Walker's brother. Junior Tafa has a super similar style to his brother, but in my opinion is a little undersized for a division, which spells trouble versus a wrestler. Valter Walker, on the other hand, is unlike Johnny in that he prefers to wrestle, and based on recent pictures is looking in pretty great shape. I'm not confident on this pick at all, but I see Valter wrestling and hugging his way to a very boring decision. Next up, we have Lee the Leech versus Carlos Prates. Lee the Leech is a legend in the game, and I hate voting against him, but last fight, he took Rodriguez to a close split loss, which I thought he won, but hasn't fought again since 2022. On the other side, Carlos has been quite active and hasn't lost since 2019 in one championship, and is fighting out of the Fighting Nerds gym, which has been on an absolute tear recently. My pick is Carlos as he seems more dangerous and is coming with a camp that just comes up with phenomenal game plans and don't seem to take fights they'll lose. However, Prates has been getting finishes lately, and it's worth noting that Lee the Leech has never been KO'd. So I'm going to be taking Carlos by decision. Next up, we got BamBam Tuivasa versus Bigi Boy Rosenstruck. Heavyweights, in my opinion, are super unpredictable, especially when they carry as much power as both of these guys. However, I do think Ty has a little bit of a looser, less fine-tuned brawling technique and style, and that's going to struggle versus Bigi Boy's crisp striking. That's why I am picking Bigi Boy to get the KO in round 3. Next up, we've got Mateusz Gamrot versus Dan the Hangman Hooker. Gamrot is a relentless chain wrestler that tries to dominantly control fights to boring decisions. Mind you, I'm biased and not the biggest fan. On the other side, you've got a lanky striker that has shown off his BJJ submissions in the past. However, this is not a good matchup for Dan. However, Gamrot did win a close split after getting very hurt versus Jalen Turner, as well as got really lucky with Fiziv's injury when I thought he was en route to losing. I see this as being a tight fight with Gamrot controlling a lot and Dan contributing the only exciting moments. That's why I have Dan winning a close decision, but I'm going to be betting the splits as well. For the co-main event, we've got Kai Kara France versus Steve Erceg. Kai Kara was on a tear until he ran into the very top, and since then has lost 2 tough but semi-close fights versus Brandon Moreno and Amir Albazi, the later of which I personally had him winning. Whereas Erceg is only on his 5th UFC fight and just lost a close title fight with the dominant champ Pantoja, where he showed off elite ground game on top of his exceptional striking. I personally see Erceg as something special, and if he gets another shot, he beats Pantoja. I do think he wins this quite easily, sadly, and maybe even finishes Kai Kara France, but my pick is Steve Erceg by decision. Finally, for the main event, we have Dricus du Plessis versus Israel Adesanya, who have both fought Sean Strickland in their last match. Izzy is one of my favorite fighters, and I recently heard in an interview he would have been a dancer if he wasn't a fighter, and I can see it. When he gets to do what he wants to in the cage, it's beautiful to watch. Keywords, when he gets to. In my opinion, he's struggled with Sean's intelligent forward pressure and couldn't style bend as he normally does with Sean right in his face. On the other side, we have one of the biggest bullies in the ring. Dricus moves forward with relentless pressure and constant power strikes. He doesn't have the same elusiveness as Sean and will probably drop the first round getting clipped bad, but he can keep up that insane pressure and volume for 25 minutes as he showed versus Sean. I see this matchup as even worse for Izzy than Sean unless he can get the KO in rounds 1 or 2. Dricus will be easier to hit, but if his chin holds up, he doesn't care, as long as he's in your face, pushing you back, throwing punches and body kicks. That's why I see Dricus winning by a decision, but will also be hedging Izzy round 1 and 2 KO. Be sure to follow Amazing Bets, as I will be posting all of my bets for bare knuckle, PFL, and UFC on Instagram later this week. Let me know what you think, and let's rob the bookies blind this week.